Welcome back to Rappahannock Issues. I'm Tom Cohen, joined here with Mark Dudenhefer, candidate for the House of Delegates in the second House seat. That's Northern Stafford and up in the Prince William County. And we were talking about VDOT and transportation before the break. And VDOT has sort of changed the way that it figures out funding for various projects. And you have been very vocal in using your knowledge of transportation issues about this. So I just think
Well,
it makes sense to ask
you're
you.
referring to House Bill 2, which was passed and signed by the governor. And what it does is attempts to rank the projects, to grade them based on economic development, congestion relief, safety, and a couple other things. But what they failed to do in that was their interpretation of the grandfathering, projects, and that hurt us really bad. But in essence, it's actually a very good bill, and it works, except that you still have startup hiccups. In a county like Stafford, I was the chairman of FAMPO. I mean, I've been intimately involved in the 6-year plan and how it's developed. But we worked hard to get those projects up to the level of actually being funded and being visible in the 6-year plan. And then they used House Bill 2 to pull the money off at the last minute. And it's actually funny now because you go a year after they took the money off, and they're now acknowledging that it was the right approach to start with, and VDOT is our biggest supporter. So we're talking about the widening of I-95 and the new bridge over the Rappahannock River.
And it was interesting. We both were at the meeting last night with VDOT, and they were talking about the divergent diamond and the widening of 630. And it just seems, when it came before the Planning Commission, we asked, and it was a done deal. I mean, it doesn't seem as though, other than when VDOT decides, there's any real leeway that anybody can influence it if they have questions.
And they made that very clear last night, that this is it, like it or not. Personally, I'm not a fan of what they're going to do. They claim that there wasn't sufficient money to do the traditional cloverleaf. So I'm a firm believer in a bird in the hand, so we need to go forward with what they're doing. It's better than what we have. But I believe that in 8 to 10 years, we'll probably regret ever investing in this experimental type interchange. And it's going to cost a lot more to fix it.
Well, it was interesting because VDOT, we got them to admit that they only look at what has been approved when they look at the numbers for growth. They don't look at what theoretically could happen. And I guess, is that something the legislature could change in VDOT, or is that just something that's a gubernatorial running the office?
The other big part of House Bill 2 is not the panacea of fixing all our transportation problems, because no matter how you look at it, you're going to have more projects that are going to be rated at the highest level than there's money to do. So you're still going to have, this rampant political process of who gets their project funded. We have these 10 projects. All of them are as high as you can get rated, but we can only afford 6. Who gets there? And it is a political process. I can't see it ever changing from being a political process. The CTV is appointed by the governor. There have been numbers of attempts at the House of Delegates and the legislature to rearrange who's on the Commonwealth Transportation Board, which seems to hold most of the cards when it comes to the allocation of funds. So they advertise it as it takes the politics out of the process, but that's really incorrect, because the final decision goes to a board that's appointed by the governor.
Right. And speaking of politics, Medicaid expansion has been a big issue that came before the legislature. It's been a major contention between the governor and the legislature. So where do you stand on that whole Medicaid issue?
I would have a hard time supporting an expansion of Medicaid under the current circumstances. No one has yet been able to tell me they throw out numbers all the time, but I don't believe that they're backed up by any facts that I've been able to find. That they claim that it would add 400,000 people to Medicare. What is the demographics of that 400,000 people? I haven't been able to find it. How many of them have insurance already, but are going to drop off of that so that I can help pay for their insurance in the future? So it isn't that we shouldn't take care of the needy. We should absolutely take care of the needy and help them as much as we can, and there are ways to do that. But Medicare is going to be a huge budget issue. It already is the fastest growing line item in the budget, and it counts for about 21% of the budget. And it's a program that's 50-50. The feds pay 50, we pay 50. But they're advertising the expansion as 90-10 after a couple of years, but nobody has been able to tell me what 10% is. And it's going to be $100 million. Where do you come up with the $100 million? You're going to have to raise taxes, or someone else is going to have to give up that money. And I don't see that really happening. It's also one of those things that once you can't experiment with it and then say, 5 years from now it didn't work, and pull it back, because that would be cruel to really do that. So I'm not in a position at this point to vote for or support the expansion of Medicaid.
Economic growth is big in Virginia. We have where the Commonwealth is tied to the federal government, either through defense or defense contractors, and there's always discussion about how to diversify our economy. So, looking at our economic issues, where do you come down and think about that?
Well, obviously, if we benefit from being so tied to the federal government, but we'll rise and fall with that. And sequestration has certainly hurt the Commonwealth. It's hurt the Northern Virginia, Stafford area, Fredericksburg, and Spotsylvania. So we worked very hard when I was on the Stafford Board of Supervisors to identify ways to diversify the Stafford economy. And we hired consultants to come in and say, why weren't retail coming to Stafford? Why was retail going to Spotsylvania? So they have those studies. I can tell you they work extremely hard to attract those types of businesses that are away from the government. Obviously, tourism is always important to our area. There's, we're in Spotsy, they're seeing a lot more distribution type centers. So there are opportunities out there. I think we need to vigorously seek them out, and we should have a package for incentives if that's what it takes. If you're going to compete in the national market, you better have the tools to do that.
And if we're going to compete with you, you need to come back and watch us after this break, where we'll continue with our last segment with Mark Dudenhefer, who's a candidate in the 2nd House District. So come on back and see us.